So this video is all about when it's time to restore or time to part out a vintage piece like this Heathkit SG6 Precision signal generator. Now I have next to me the whole reason I picked up this signal generator, and this is the Paraset, sometimes called the Paraset Mark 7 or the Hwadden Mark 7. This is a spy set that was built by the SOE to be dropped into France during World War II. And it's a first principles regenerative receiver with a simple one-tube transmitter that's crystal controlled. It's all about this crystal. That's why I picked up this generator. Look what's on the front. It's a crystal socket that would accept these large crystals. And these large crystals are what I wanted to use because I want to build another Paraset, maybe do a video series on building a Paraset. Now, of course, you could use banana jacks like this for your crystal socket, and this will work. Notice how the crystals plug straight into an ordinary banana jack. But I wanted to have an actual socket.
Just to give you a taste, this is a front view of a cash box Paraset. We all love Hank, the Paraset guy, active ham, restorer of a lot of European equipment, and you can get a lot of these parts directly from him. It took me over 2 years to collect all of the parts I needed to build my first Paraset.
I picked up this signal generator. Let's focus on that a little. First of all, this signal generator was completely unknown to me. I didn't know what would be inside. I assumed it was tube type because it looked pretty old. I didn't know if it was an AC-DC set or if it had a power transformer, for instance. But I can tell you, it was not a safe thing to plug in at the Hamfest. This is the actual power cord that was on the back. Yeah, I don't think that's the right cord that we want to plug in, guys.
This is just so delicious. I just don't know when I've had salad as good as this. Bakos? Even better.
That's a crunchy cord. So what this video is about is really an ethical dilemma. Should I try to restore this signal generator, or should I do with it what I originally set out to do, and that is to remove this juicy crystal socket and take advantage of these nice DACA-ware chicken head knobs, which would go on the Paraset, and maybe some other parts that would go with the Paraset inside. So let's take a look and see what this thing's made of, and then we'll let you decide, should this thing be taken apart, parted out, so to speak, or should I try to restore it to its former glory? So let's take a quick look on the inside. As you can see, we have a couple of 6C4s, and indeed, somebody tried to make this into some kind of a transmitter. There's all kinds of wires that have been bent up around that crystal socket. So yeah, somebody was trying to make some kind of a transmitter and modulate it with the other 6C4. That's what I think, a little AM transmitter maybe? You can see the parts here. Let's look on the underside. See what we have here. Yeah, there's your power transformer. And all these capacitors, of course, will be dried up. Anyway, there are salvageable parts. Look at those nice potentiometers and that rotary switch, multi-gang, and the beautiful 365 puff capacitor. So, yes, plenty of cool parts in the generator. So this is the SG6 signal generator, a miniature tabletop generator. And there are a few different versions. This kit started to be made available by Heathkit in the early 50s, maybe 1950. And later on, the packaging changed slightly. There was a lower cost style of package in the later models. Later on, the SG8 replaced this, but they kept it a very small size. Oh, and it's nice because I've got the 606, HP 606 late model from probably the late 60s in the background. Also a tube type generator. It's nice to have the two bookends here, two different generators, kind of the last of the tube type generators that are practical for the bench. As a matter of fact, I'm thinking of replacing this old HP with a solid state generator. Finally going to a solid state generator on the bench. But back to the Heathkit. This guy gives you a lot of range. It goes all the way from about 150 or 160 kilohertz all the way up to 50 megahertz. I picked this up expressly because I wanted this crystal socket that somebody had drilled into the front. I didn't really care about the generator. So let's get that out of the way to begin with. But let's price it out. If I were simply to part out this generator and just treat it as vintage parts for building projects, about how much value would be in this generator. I see a couple of tubes. I see an output transformer. I see what appears to be a power transformer, some switches, a nice variable capacitor. If I was just to part it out, what would it be worth? Is it worth restoring? Well, we'll find out.
There's nobody that's really naive on this channel. You all know that the cost of parts, especially vintage parts, has gone out of sight. And my little remark that it took me 2 years to find all the parts for a Paraset simply means I wasn't willing to pay those big prices to get all the parts, that I looked under tables, flea markets, and ham radio, ham-fest flea markets until I slowly collected the parts. I kept putting the parts that I discovered in a box, and eventually I had enough parts to begin the Paraset. Of course, the chassis of the Paraset is a whole other story, and we will get into that in a later video. So, what could this signal generator do for me? Was it worth repairing, or was it worth trying to get some of the parts? Now, this is not a rare signal generator. This generator can be found basically for the price of shipping most of the time. And when you find it at the Hamfest, as I did, this is exactly how much I paid for it. $10 for the signal generator. Now, of course, it had already been damaged in this area by the guy putting in the crystal socket. And as I looked inside, it looks like he was trying to maybe convert it into a QRP rig. Maybe this would be a good QRP rig. I don't know. As you can see, it's a couple of 6C4 tubes. One is a modulated oscillator, and one is the actual oscillator modulator amplifier that's working with the other 6C4. So there you go. It's pretty simple, a pretty simple device. They call this a Hartley, and certainly it looks like a Hartley here, but the way this is drawn, you could probably interpret this as an Armstrong on these two channels at least. But I believe that they are thinking that this is a Hartley oscillator. In the modulation scheme, they make approximately a 400 hertz tone with this split C and choke in a Colpitt's audio oscillator. And you can do audio output, and you can do audio input if you want to modulate it directly. So we got a wonderful little simple generator. Oh, notice there is a transformer. This is not a Widowmaker. Well, actually it is a Widowmaker when you consider that line cord, the crunchy Baco's line cord. So let's move on. Now, if we get the original Hwadden Mark VII cash box style Paraset, we're going to need a couple of these variable capacitors. And you can get the original parts. These are actually pulls that they're taking out of something. much like we do when we part something out. So does the RF Parts Company. And the transformer that's in there, this might not be representative of the exact unit, but it's certainly close. It's got to supply 6.3 volts for the 6C4s, and it's got to have some kind of high voltage for the tubes as well. So it's a dual transformer. These are not cheap. So, selenium rectifier, I love those. RF oscillators, a Hartley, modulation generators, a Colpitts. Okay. So I just took some of the parts that I could see very easily just looking at it, and I did some rough parts costs. And you know that tubes cost what tubes cost. That transformer could be quite expensive. The chicken head knobs have gone up in price. Lamps and jewels are available, but they're expensive. That nice fluted knob on the front dial. The 1/4-inch phone jacks. How about that 365 variable cap inside? Man, if you want to make a crystal radio, you're going to have to pay some money. The audio choke, very desirable for the Paraset, by the way. I wonder if we could use that audio choke in the Paraset. Toggle switch, a potentiometer with a switch on it, and a rotary switch. So what could we actually use here in the Paraset? You notice I didn't list the crystal socket, which, of course, that was the whole reason. But the crystal socket's not part of the original generator, so I didn't include it. So we can probably use one or two of those chicken head knobs, possibly the fluted knob. We can use one of the phone jacks. We can probably use the audio choke. We can use the toggle switch possibly. So there's some parts here we can use for the Paraset. But if you were to order all these parts, it would be about $200 worth of parts, not including shipping. So add another $100 to that, and that's what this generator is really worth. Plus, did you notice how close that case was to the Paraset size? I wonder if that actual aluminum chassis would make a fine Paraset case if it was just cut down a little bit.